It's good to be here again. And on such a podium, it wouldn't be out of place to wish the first ever female Chief of Staff of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Akosua Frebo Pare, a happy belated birthday. Her appointment to the high office of the Chief of Staff affirms the President's support for female activism. Investing in education and skills as part of the African-EU Alliance case study of Ghana. The African-EU partnership that was established in Cairo in the year 2000 at its first summit is the formal political channel through which the European Union and the African continent work together, engage in political and policy dialogues, and define their cooperative relationship. At the heart of this alliance is a commitment from both continents to move beyond a donor or recipient relationship towards a long-term cooperation on jointly identified mutual and complementary interests. It is based on principles of ownership, partnership, and solidarity, and adoption marks a new phase in the African-EU Alliance. The African-European Alliance aimed at deepening economic relations and boosting investment and jobs is worth commending. As rightly said by President Jean-Claude Juncker on September 12, 2018, during the State of the Union address, and I quote, "Africa does not need charity. It needs true and fair partnership. And we Europeans need this partnership just as much," unquote. For us in Africa, led by the leadership of His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, we are no longer interested in being a burden on others as set out by this strategic alliance. We will shoulder our own responsibilities and build societies and nations that will be attractive to our youth. We have the necessary sense of enterprise, creativity, innovation, and hard work to engineer this transition. Hence, our vision of Ghana beyond aid, and by extension, Africa beyond aid. As a nation, we have identified education as the central premise on which this strategic agenda can be achieved. It is worthy to note, Africa as a continent has the youngest population of any region of the world and continues to experience strong demographic growth in this direction. Hence, providing people with access to education is of paramount importance. Perhaps it is on this realization our current president, under whom I serve, in declaring his manifesto of governance as an opposition leader, then boldly declared, Ghana will and must implement free basic and secondary education now than later. His detractors and naysayers vehemently contested this ambition as ludicrous and unrealistic, considering the enormous fund injections such pioneering agendas usually require. Today, while standing here, I would like to borrow the words of another true African believer, the great Nelson Mandela of blessed memory. And I quote, "It always seems impossible until it is done," unquote. Just within a period of 2 years, Ghana, under the radically believing spirit of His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has successfully introduced and implemented the free basic and secondary education for all students in the country. By free basic to secondary education, we mean free tuition, admission fee, textbooks, library fees, science center fees, fees for ICT, examination fees, payment of utility fees, boarding and meals. This comprehensive package is accessible to all Ghanaian children and stands on 4 key pillars. 1, removal of all cost barriers through the absorption of fees by the government. 2, expansion of infrastructure and facilities to accommodate the expected increase in enrollment. 3, improvement in quality through provision of core textbooks and supplementary readers, teacher rationalization and deployment. And the 4th, development of employable skills, thus improving the Ghanaian student to match with the best in the world. The result of implementing this bold scheme today has placed 424,092 students into secondary education, which is approximately 92% of the total qualified students eligible for enrollment. When the EU set out this joint partnership strategy in the early 2000s, It only envisaged a total of 720,000 students to receive training in vocational skills by the year 2027, all through the African continent. In Ghana, we are once again pioneering this strategic agenda in the West African zone and already sealed bilateral agreement with KfW, German Development Bank. Since its inception in 2017, 5,000 people have received training from the scheme, of which about 60% were women. The agreement will end by 2020, and we aspire to train a total of 16,000 people. The passion of this government towards education and training as a needed resource to enhance the Ghanaian capacity is unprecedented. And as a people, the majority held view is that we are better off educated and independent than held impoverished by lack of requisite training for today's global market. What happens to the large global youth outlet in Africa has a definite knock-on effect on our immediate Western powerful neighbors, Europe. It is therefore in the interest of the two sides to keep up the developmental progress in this direction and ensure our youths are well equipped to prevent further catastrophes on the Mediterranean by African youths who have lost hope in their immediate environs and are seeking for better pastures elsewhere. The current president of the European Union once again put this view in a much direct perspective, and I quote, "What happens in Africa matters for Europe. What happens in Europe matters for Africa. Our partnership is an investment in our shared future. It is a partnership of equals in which we support each other, help each other to prosper, and make the world a safer, more stable, and more sustainable place to live," unquote. In the spirit of the partnership highlighted by my preceding paragraphs between the two continents, and also the fact that I work as the director of the Ghana Scholarship Secretariat, an institution under the office of the president, tasked with the funding of all these educational schemes introduced by the bold leadership of His Excellency the President, I would like to use the next few minutes to touch on some of the interventions I have managed to introduce in my sector. Under my leadership, I have successfully introduced decentralization of the scholarship award at all levels in the country. It is worth reminding ourselves that one of the objectives of the African EU Alliance is investing in people by investing in education and skills. And we cannot fully achieve this if we leave some of the citizens out. Hence, they need to decentralize. The Scholarship Secretariat is working in collaboration with the regional coordinating councils, metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies in order to achieve the systematic decentralization of scholarship awarding process with the view of increasing transparency and accessibility to available funding opportunities. The district assemblies are responsible for the Secretariat, under the Secretariat's guidelines, for the publishing of scholarship openings using the district information channels, such as community information centers, church announcements, mosque publications, among others. Shortlisted applicants within the enclaves then appear before the District Scholarship Review Committee, after which a recommendation is made to the Central Scholarship Review Committee, which will then award the scholarship to the deserving applicant. The composition of the District Scholarship Review Committee is made up of the District or Municipal Chief Executive, a representative for the traditional authority that is very dominant within the district, a representative from the District Ghana Education Service Office or from a tertiary institution within the district, and two other representatives appointed by the Scholarship Secretariat. I believe with this, every Ghanaian, irrespective of where they find themselves or their background, will be a beneficiary. Before I end, it will not be out of place to remind ourselves that the target set for ourselves can only be achievable if we all put our shoulders to the wheel. We can, in our own small ways and from our own small corners, make this EU-African partnership a reality. And also, I wish to commend highly the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy for such a very important forum where one does not only get the chance to share with the world the happenings back in their home country, but also let's listen and learn a lot from other great speakers as well. It is my belief that no mountain is too high in governance when the will of leadership to do right is there. Danke, and thank you.
All right, now we open up the floor for questions. Once again, please keep them to the point. We have about 15 minutes for questions, so we want to do as many as we can. Please?
Yes. Yes, please go ahead.
In regards to what is needed and allowing people from Africa into Europe with scholarship and to broaden the cultural, knowledge, is it possible for Africa and Europe to leave their original dominant and subordinate relationship if that access to European education is not also combined with a ceasing of what's often undesirable European intervention as well in things such as the countries in Africa as their economy?
Okay. I will take 3 at a go and answer. Yes, please.
My name is Jake Usman Orhan. I am from Finland, originally from Somalia. My question is, it's very important to invest for education in Africa, for future country in Africa. But I'm a bit skeptic, for example, country in Ghana, which you produce a lot of students who graduate, for example, healthy sector, especially for nurses. And then when they graduated and there is no job for them, coming to looking for example, an opportunity in Europe, for example, I have seen some article in London. There's many nurses who come into work, like in adult homes or like that, for example, who are more qualified actually. And nothing is remaining. For example, maybe you are running a lack of nurses there, or maybe because you're producing a lot of students, and then they are not remaining in the country. Because it's good, for example, you produce a lot of invest in schools, and then to get employment, you want people in Ghana. So what do you think about that?
Let me take the third one. Okay. If there's none, then I'll start with my very good friend here. She wanted to know more about regional integration in terms of scholarships. I'm happy to report to you that as we speak now, there's a serious dialogue on regional integration. We're going to have the West African Scholarship Review Board. That's made up of all the West African countries trying to pull our resources together to be able to propel our people. Because one of the maxims of this EU-African alliance is that whatever happens to Africa matters to Europe. And whatever happens to Europe matters to Africa. So there's a need to have a very good collaboration. Because where I come from in Ghana, if we do not have this total sub-regional development, our development will be meaningless. Because our borders, like you all know, free movement of goods and people as one of the key objectives of any regional integration is very key. Therefore, development is very total. So we're going to have this West Africa or ECOWAS Scholarship Review Board, where the key objective is that every government within the ECOWAS enclave will be making annual allocations into this regional fund to take care of education within the sub-region. It's at a very initial stage, and I believe that with all of you, our help, we'll be soliciting for information on how to go about the dynamics of it. I'll be able to report to you again, all things being equal, a year by now, the status of such an agenda or such an initiative. The second one from my good brother happens to do with what happens after graduation. I'm happy to report to you that under the radical believing spirit of His Excellency the President, we are establishing in Ghana what we call a labor bank. The labor bank basically means that we're putting all our resources on what we call a skills database platform. So for instance, if an investor is coming from Finland, we have all students that have schooled in Finland. Their database will populate in our system. You know, people drive value, and it's a very unique selling proposition where, let's say, you have students who have schooled in Finland, and there's an investor coming from Finland. I mean, the orientation is so seamless. We want to be the net exporter of labor within the sub-region. Because like we all know, it's a notorious fact that Cuba thrives very well on medical tourism or medical export. It's the same thing that we want to replicate in Africa and for that matter, Ghana. We have a very huge skill. You made mention of the health sector, where there was a serious backlog from 2013. All people who graduated in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 were not employed. Again, it had to do with the kind of arrangement that the then administration had with the IMF and the World Bank, where there was a freeze on employment. As you all know, we have now weaned ourselves off that facility. And as at last week, the government was able to engage all this backlog of health service workers. So the Labor Bank, in Ghana, we have an association called Association of Ghana Industries. All industries in Ghana are together and underpinned by the Ghana Investment Promotion Council, because for us, labor is very key. We can have all the technology and all the things that we are in Europe. You don't have the people to drive value. It will be as useless as a white elephant. So the government has put in place this strategy to be able to export. Because what do you think will happen or what will happen to our inflow or our gross national product if we have all these students going to even neighboring countries to work and be paid for into the bank? It's going to have a very huge impact on our economy. So that is where His Excellency is driving to. Thank you. Yes, please.
Mr. Kingsley, thank you very much for your presentation. You touched on the free SHS, which the government has introduced, and you talked about the fact that it has, you said about 92% yes, of people who have to be in such educational system have been so far covered. Would you touch on the fact that the free SHS has increased enrollment by close to 20%, and the fact that together with the other policies of the government to wait one district, one factory, one village, one dam, and those things are already, especially with regards to, in addition to the free zones enclave, these are all policies that have been set up by the government to get the Ghanaian population ready to partner FDIs, so that Europe, wishing to partner Africa, especially to deal with this issue of migration, could look at supporting Africa more in terms of FDIs, and also helping African continents, and Ghana in particular, to set itself as an example for African countries to emulate, in the sense that Ghana has not only done these things, but Ghana has also strengthened its democracy, having been the only country in Africa that has freely transferred power from one government to the other for about 3 times now, so that would help prop up the economy of the country, and that would send a message to the rest of Africa, especially in areas where they are prone to political instability, to stick to the fortunes of democracy and ensure that the whole world is peaceful, and thereby creating a situation where not only will there be employment in Africa and Ghana, but that will also help in arresting this migration issue in Europe. So we have and that, if well addressed, will help in strengthening this SDG of inclusive development. So we do stress the fact that the free SHS, which is building skill, and the policies of the government of Ghana, if supported by Europe, would help in providing employment, providing jobs, and helping to stem the issue of migration to Europe, and helping to provide a safety net for the masses, which will go a long way in ensuring peace in the world. Would you stress on
Sure, I very well agree with you. You couldn't have said it better than the maxims you've just provided. Education, like you know, was to deal with the soft side of our presentation. But in Ghana, as we speak now, Ghana is being industrialized under a caption we call one district, one factory. In every district, there's a factory, or there's going to be a factory. We set for ourselves to build a lot of factories so that people who graduate could find jobs to do. And graduation that may not necessarily be at the college level or the university level. There's a lot of investments being made into technical and vocational education. And under the Ministry of Education, there's a whole Deputy Minister of Education responsible for the TVET, what we call the technical and vocational education. We want to entreat the world, or ask the world, that we have weaned ourselves of handouts, and we want to come to the negotiation table as able and capable people, because we've done it for ourselves already. Very soon, our importations of so many things are going to stop, because we are growing what we need for our people. And starvation and other things, farming, which most of the time happens in most of the countries in Africa, will be a thing of the past. Just to conclude this chapter by saying that last year, for the first time in about 40 years, Ghana exported farm produce such as maize, plantain, beans, and other things to our neighboring countries. It has never happened. It was all due to His Excellency's direction of a program we call Planting for Food and Jobs. Thank you.
Probably got time for one more question. Anybody else?
Yes, please.
Sarah, take it away.
Earlier, particularly in talking about being a big exporter, in what ways has Cuba inspired you in Ghana to be a big labor exporter? And in what ways does Ghana want to be that big labor exporter in a way that resembles Cuba?
Okay, thank you very much. The Ghana-Cuban relationship started as far back as 1960 under our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. You know, after we had our independence from the British imperial power, there was the need to, take our destiny in our own hands. Therefore, there was a need to have these collaborations with nations that have had great learning curves in such fields, and realized that medicine was Cuba. So since 1960, we've been sending students, Ghanaians, to Cuba every 6 to 7 years. I'm happy to report to you that in July, that's next month, 21st, 231 graduates, 231 Ghanaians will be graduating with degrees in medicine from Cuba. And our Vice President, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Bawumia, is a guest of honor for that occasion. These students are going to come. We are not yet there as a country where, because the patient to doctor ratio, we've not gotten to the level. But with these interventions that we are having in our educational system, it is likely that in the next 2 years, we'll have excess and there will be the need to export. So we have had this relationship with Cuba for almost 60 years. We understand how it works, and we replicate it in sub-Saharan Africa, and Ghana is the beacon. Thank you.